Welcome back, guys. This is Library of Orthonc, LOTR TCG, back with another all foil, all masterwork deck video. So we had a lot of positive feedback from our expanded deck where we did Powerful Guide. And so this week we're going to be doing another expanded deck. I kind of built these two decks to play against each other as the top tier decks in the expanded format. So the other deck we have today is the Ultimate Madril. This is by Sergeant Drano on the Last Homely House forums. So just going to walk you through this deck. Probably going to be another long video because I want to try to cover as many of the interactions. But again, with this top tier expanded format decks, there's just going to be so many interactions that you'll just have to play and experience on your own. But I'll try to give you the key things that you're going to be looking for. So just starting right into it, we've got our ring bearer is Frodo, the Resolute Hobbit. So this one's, again, just pretty good because it's a 12 resistance. And this is going to be a burden-based deck that does utilize burdens. So just very important just to protect yourself and make sure you wouldn't end up getting corrupted. So Frodo, the Resolute Hobbit. As is common and expanded, we do have the Great Ring. Again, with the Frodo that can take extra burdens, this is nice because this is where you can add a burden to make yourself strength +3, and there's no penalty to wear it during the maneuver phase. So that is the Great Ring. So there's our Frodo and Ring. I think these two, again, just look total classic together. Then getting into the Starting Fellowship. This Starting Fellowship, again, will seem kind of unfair as you look at it. So the first card we have here is Faramir, the Captain of Ithilien. So he is Ranger, that's important, and he's Hunter 2, so basically makes him a 9 power. And then if he's in your Starting Fellowship, his Twilight cost is -1. So that's huge too, just reduces himself to 2. And then this last ability is nice too, Exert Faramir to heal a companion with resistance 5 or more. That was eroded to, say, another companion, so you can't just keep exerting himself to heal himself, exerting himself to heal himself. So instead of a companion, another companion. And that is important for, in particular, one of the cards in this deck here that we'll cover really likes to see Faramir exerting. So Faramir, Captain of Ithilien, very key to the Fellowship. Then the next card we have is the Ranger of the White Tree. This guy is basically just a serviceable ranger, honestly. So he's a ranger, he's Hunter 1, and even though it shows that he costs 3 up there, when this is in your Starting Fellowship and you can spot an unbound Gondor companion with cost 3 or more, his Twilight cost is -2. So the cool thing is, again, Faramir has a 3 cost. So once he's down, you spot a character with a 3 cost, and then you use that to say, yep, I spot a character with a 3 cost, so this guy is -2, so this guy only costs 1. So we've got 2 for Faramir, 1 for the Ranger of the White Tree, and then that means we still have 1 left. And the good thing is the next card, which is our deck's namesake, Madril, the Defender of Osgiliath, does not use any Twilight. So even though he costs 2, his effect is, while you can spot 2 Rangers, which are the guys we just played, Madril is Twilight cost -2. So he's 0. And there's a beautiful masterwork version of him. And so he is Ranger, Hunter 1, and his main effect of what he's in here for is, at the start of the maneuver phase, each minion is sight number +1 for each threat you can spot until the start of the regroup phase. So basically what that is trying to say is, when it's your maneuver phase, all minions get basically sight number +1 for the number of threats that are in play during the maneuver phase. So basically you look at the threats at the start of the maneuver phase, whatever that number is, every minion has that number added to their sight number. So basically it makes everyone roaming when you have sufficient threats down. excuse me, when you have sufficient threats down, everyone is roaming. So there is the Madril. This, again, you'll see the kind of the broken interactions this has with this deck. This card was banned in standard when it was legal in the standard format, but because this is expanded, he is not banned in expanded. And our last one, again, great synergy. We use our last one for Pippin, the wearer of black and silver. If Pippin is not assigned to a skirmish, return him to your hand to wound a roaming minion twice. So you can tell that synergizes very well with making minions roaming, is we have Pippin who wounds those minions twice. So that's basically effectively going to be wound any minion twice. And then, like I said, that used the last one in our fellowship. You just add up all these numbers, but we're only at 4 now because it's 2, 1, 0, 1. So that's our 4, and we're not done yet because the last member of our starting fellowship is Smeagol Always Helps. Again, Smeagol's great and expanded, and then this one in particular has the tricks that we saw in our last deck where you can assign a minion to Smeagol, add 2 threats to exhaust that minion. So again, in this deck, you want to add threats anyway, and then exhausting a minion is great because then you can wound them with the Smeagol condition. You can wound them with Pippin. There's other things that you can wound with in here as well. So just again, these 3 kind of you see going together, and then these 2 just round it out. But again, very good starting fellowship here. Just line that up for you. And then there's our Madril. And then give you our Frodo too. So again, in expanded here, you're starting 6 guys in your starting fellowship. So you're really establishing the table just right there from the get-go. So that is our starting fellowship. Then next, we have our other companions, which are going to be fairly few, like I said, because we're already at 6 right there. The other key companion from our culture is Boromir, the defender of Minas Tirith. This Boromir is fantastic for 2 reasons. 1, he's a ranger, and number 2, you can add 2 to heal Boromir. And again, that's just fellowship : add 2 to heal Boromir, meaning you can do that repeatedly as many times as you want. So basically, you get Boromir freshly healed every single time you have a fellowship phase. So that you're going to see has a lot of synergy with some of the stuff that we're going to do. Then our last 2 companions are our different culture, the Gandalf culture. We do have Gandalf the Wise Guide. This is in here very largely for just protection, to protect the other things that you have set up, so that if your opponent is playing any events, if they're playing an event to get rid of your conditions, or if they're playing an event to, sudden strike out a minion that's going to cause a problem for you, or they're just playing a, glass cannon event of their own. Obviously, that's what Gandalf is here for, is he's here to protect yourself from those events. So for those of you who don't know it, it's just any response in any phase. If an event is played, exert Gandalf twice to cancel the event. So we do run 3 of that. And then lastly, so that we can do our triple move shenanigans as needed, we have Radagast the Brown. And again, Radagast always acts as a substitute for Gandalf with anything that calls for a wizard. So very nice to have that round out our companions. Then we do have a few allies next. And again, you'll see that this deck has some synergy with healing and whatnot for your allies. But of course, since we play Gandalf and we're playing Expanded, we have Barlaam Butterbur, the Prancing Pony Proprietor. Very key, as you saw in the last deck that was more Gandalf based. This one, we only play 1 copy, but we do intend to repeatedly use him through healing. So Barlaam Butterbur, and again, he's just exert to take a Gandalf event from the discard pile. So that is very strong. Then we have Hugin, the Emissary of Laketown. This is an odd card, and looking at it, you would assume not very good. but his effect is exert Hugin to reveal a free people's card from your discard pile and place it beneath your draw deck. Why he's so good is anything that you need to get back, he can get back for you, meaning, you know, you can get it back into your draw deck. So granted, you're going to have a way to search it up, but anything that's in your discard pile, you know, if your opponent discarded a key condition, for example, you can just exert out Hugin and then put the condition back on the bottom of your deck, and then, you know, fish it back out with your something slimy Smeagol event. So, and there's other synergies with that, but anything that lets you search your deck, this makes sure that if you lost the thing that you were searching for, that you get it back, and can repeatedly use it. So that's Hugin, Emissary from Laketown. The last one I think is probably kind of unnecessary here, but we've got Peter Jackson here, Albert Drury, Entertainer from Bree. So basically, this is more of just a hate card for Isengard and Moria minions, but you've already got the rest of the Gandalf ally package, so it's pretty low investment to throw this guy in. But if you wanted to cut a card, this is probably cuttable, because it's really just in here for hate against those two cultures. But it obviously works well with all the things that heal Barlaman and Hugin. So next we have really part of the key engine of the deck, because this deck is based on exertions and based on roaming. So let's go ahead and look at what we're looking at here, guys, is possessions, and this is one of the very well-known possessions, the Ithilien Blade. So bearer must be a Gondor man, and while you can spot a roaming minion, bearer is strength +1. So that's not entirely useless by any means, because this adds 3 to the strength of your Gondor men and can make them win skirmishes when you need to. But the really huge thing in here is exert bearer twice to discard a roaming minion. So again, how that interacts with your namesake Madril is, at the start of the maneuver phase, Madril makes the minions roaming, and then as a maneuver action, you can exert bearer twice to discard a roaming minion. So that will just basically discard any minion. So that is just a fantastic effect in this deck in particular. So that's really the main. There's redundancy in this, but that's the main broken interaction. There is those two guys working together. So we do sport a 3 set of those Ithilien Blades, because we really want to get those on our Gondor men so that they can exert and just basically discard any minion. Then more synergy with the Ithilien Blade is the Ranger's Cloak. So the Ranger's Cloak gives you some redundancy. You know, as you see here, while bearer is a ranger, each minion skirmishing bearer is sight number +2. So that can add an extra 2 on to whatever the Madril total is if you need it. You know, you probably don't as long as you've got Madril going, but if you do need the extra 2 for making a minion roaming, you have it there. But again, that you'd have to wait for the skirmish phase for. So there's kind of a non-bow there where you can't get this +2 to interact with this maneuver exertion, but you can do it for anything that would help during the skirmish phase. And then also, if you had no other methodology with which to add threats, there's probably better ways to add threats in this deck, but if you need to add threats, this does also allow you to add threats during the skirmish to get your threat total up there if you need to. And again, all that does is make minions even more roaming. Again, it's likely excessive and not necessary. But then the huge bonus here is it gives you extra vitality, because when you are doing your exertions, you're going to be exerting twice. It's very nice to have some extra vitality. So the Ranger's Cloak provides that extra vitality. And then you'll see there is going to be some relevancy to the resistance of your companions too, and this does add to the resistance also. So we've got a pair, 2 of those Ranger Cloaks. I'd say for sure you're going to want to have one of those on Boromir, the Defender of Minas Tirith, because again, he is allowed to self-heal. So the more vitality you can get on him, the better. And then probably you get your second one on Faramir because he has that exert to heal ability, and that will allow him to utilize that more often. But obviously those can also go on the Ranger of the White Tree or Madril himself as well. But I'd say most effective certainly on the two we just reviewed. Then last miscellaneous Gondor possession is just the Flaming Brand. I always thought they should have foiled the flame on this. I think that's one of the few foiling bad choices I've seen on a Lord of the Rings card. But the Flaming Brand, you guys are all familiar with. It's just kind of a more anti-tech versus Nazgul, easy to slap down and cycle. Then, in particular, expanded Nazgul are very strong, so I'm guessing this is in here just as a little extra defense on that. So then, moving on to our last two possessions. These are not Gondor possessions, but you saw these guys also in the last video. We do have Shadowfax, the greatest of the Miras. Again, just a beautiful, beautiful Lord of the Rings card, my favorite card. This really makes your deck go. So if you may remember this goes on any wizard, so you can put it on Gandalf or Radagast, preferably on Gandalf, of course, because the Shadowfax synergizes very well with the Wise Guide, because if you have an unexhausted Wise Guide with Shadowfax, you can actually cancel 2 events, which is just kind of crazy because you'd have 5 vitality. You could use this ability twice and still stay alive. But the other thing that really synergizes with this deck is we do add burdens in this deck. You'll see the Smeagol adds a burden, but there's also a Smeagol event that will repeatedly allow us to play the next site that adds a burden. So being able to keep adding threats to remove those burdens is absolutely essential. It's also essential to get those threats added for Madril, so that Madril is making all the minions roaming. You know, like I said, he actually turns having threats into a good thing. So so that's really important as part of your threat engine and burden removal engine. So that is Shadowfax, greatest of the Miras. You know, just love that card. So, and you'll notice that's just an absolute expanded staple. Then the next we have is our single artifact, and that artifact is the Throne of Minas Tirith. This is an incredibly hard to find card because it's a Rise of Saruman masterwork. But what it does is you play it for 2, and to play you have to spot 2 Gondor companions or Denethor. And each time a minion is killed or discarded from play during a skirmish, you may reinforce a Gondor token. So that's a lot of verbiage there, but basically what that's saying is during the skirmish phase, if you kill a minion or discard a minion, you get an extra Gondor token. Now, the important part with earning this extra token, and again, this is a rule that's not was not very well included because it was thrown into, I think, the Bloodlines rule book was when it first came out, is this term reinforce. So reinforce means place a token on a card that already has a token. So beware of that you cannot reinforce a card with no tokens. So the card has to have at least 1 token still on it when you trigger the reinforce ability if you want to be able to add a second token to it. So you can go from 1 to 2, but you can't go from 0 to 1. Very important interaction to be aware of there. And then skirmish, this is key too, because if you have possessions that are giving you problems, primarily Grand, which can discard anything, you don't want to give your opponent a chance to resolve a Grand, you pull 3 Gondor tokens off any of your conditions. And that's the nice part about this, is it's just remove 3 tokens. So you can remove them from anywhere. Usually that ability is on the card that has the tokens, but you see that Minas Tirith here does not have tokens of its own. Oh, I just noticed the tip of Boromir's horn and Denethor's ring there is foiled. Again, the select and that candelabra. The selective foiling on these cards is just so fantastic. But sorry, I digress. The point is usually when you're removing 3 tokens, you're removing them from the card. This just lets you remove 3 from anywhere. So as long as you've got 3 Gondor tokens among all your cards, you can remove them to discard a possession. The other main possession that you need to be hugely aware of when you're playing with this deck is the Ships of Great Draught, because that has a cost to use of remove a threat. So if any player resolves the Ships of Great Draught, they can just perpetually remove all your threats and never allow you to have a threat ever. And that's a huge problem for Madril, because Madril wants there to be threats. So if you see a Ships of Great Draught, that is kill on sight. Usually it's when you're playing against Corsairs, but I've even seen in some of these expanded shadows, they'll throw one of those in there and search it up with a sudden strike, and then that will perpetually not allow you to have threats and disable your strategy. So be very aware of the negative implications of that happening, and the throne is in here to stop that. So because that is so important, we do have 3 copies. Now this is the one deficiency in the deck here. We're running 2 regular RFs for the throne here, and anyone who has these, hit me up. I'm looking to finalize this deck, and that'd be super cool to have those all in the Masterworks. But still very thankful to have the RF version of those as well. So that is our artifacts. Then we move into our followers. So we do have, first off, Deagle, the Fateful Finder. So basically, he's in there to get your possessions. Primarily, you're going after Shadowfax. Got to get that down right away. But then also your Athelian Blades. So Deagle is just to help you get Shadowfax, Athelian Blade, whatever you need to get your combo assembled. And so he's fantastic for that. So we do run 3 copies of that. And again, these will synergize with our Shadow, where if we get these into our discard pile, then we can play the Golem out of our discard pile that synergizes with these guys. But again, we're only covering the free people's side of this today. We're not covering the Shadow right now, but that's an important thing to know about Deagle and Expanded, is getting him in your discard pile is actually good. Unfortunately, when you utilize him, he doesn't go to your discard pile. Oh no, sorry, I'm saying that wrong. He does. Discard this from play. So yes, you get him into your discard pile. Where he goes out of the discard pile is, I believe, the Golem that you play with these exiles these or removes them from the game, whatever you want to say. It takes them out of your discard pile and completely removes them from play. So that's what I was thinking of. I apologize. So that is really good synergy, then, even better than I was saying. So you play him, you use him, then he's in your discard pile, then you remove him out to get your Smeagol. But enough of that, because that's kind of covering the defensive strategy. Then our last follower is Palando, the far traveling one. Again, these Gandalf Masterworks are just beautiful. And what this is you can put it on Gandalf, and if you are going to be able to win a skirmish, getting up to that 10 power range with Palando plus Shadowfax plus Gandalf, if you can win yourself some skirmishes, you can whittle down the shadow conditions, and that's really nice. Also, playing aid cost in the maneuver phase helps you spot tokens if you ever have an event that makes you spot tokens in the maneuver phase, which Gandalf does. And then the final synergy with this that's not always expected is you can aid this onto a Faramir or a Boromir if you need to make those guys exert. Again, if they've got their Athelian Blades or Ranger's Cloaks, they're able to exert then anyway. But if you absolutely need to get an exert, this gives 2 exerts for a card you'll see later on, where we get some benefits for exerting Faramir and Boromir. So that's kind of the last synergy to be aware of, is that generally that's just a massive penalty to exert twice if you're not a Gandalf companion, but potentially you could use it in this deck. Then moving on to the conditions, and this is what I was just talking about actually, this is really actually one of the absolute key cards in your strategy, and probably the first one you're going to go after when you're searching conditions. is the Steward's Legacy. So you can ignore the first one. We don't play Denethor, but these last two are both incredibly impactful. Second one is each time Boromir exerts, you may exert a minion. So again, this is our absolute beast, Boromir, who can self-heal every single turn. So the idea there is that you get yourself a Boromir, get a cloak on him if you can, but you can, every time this guy exerts, a minion exerts. And that's any phase. Again, this is just a support area condition. It's not limited to a particular phase, and it literally is just each time Boromir exerts, you may exert a minion. So if you exert for your Athelian Blade, and it says, exert twice to discard a minion, you also get to take both of those exertions and give them to two other minions. So you discard the best minion, and then you get two additional exertions on top of that because of the Steward's Legacy. And then, again, that's anytime Boromir exerts. Then last ability is each time Faramir exerts, you may spot a minion to prevent it from using special abilities until the regroup phase. So like I said, this is synergizing with our Captain of Athelion. And so in the maneuver phase, he can exert to heal a companion with resistance 5 or more. So again, the infinite combo basically was when he could heal himself, he could exert, heal, and the end result would be is that no minions would have special abilities. Again, that's illegal. You can't do that. You can only do that for as many exertions as Faramir can legitimately take to heal other companions. He can't heal himself. So natively, you could do that twice per turn. Again, if you had a Ranger's Cloak on there, you could do it 3 times. But the idea there is then you could exert, for example, to heal Boromir, and then exert Boromir more to exert more minions. So these two guys can synergize too, with Faramir exerting to heal Boromir, and then Boromir doing more exertions to exert more minions off of the legacy. So this is incredibly difficult to sequence and keep track of all of your exertions, but knowing what the abilities are is the first step. And so that's the synergy there. The resistance 5 or more, you really do have to keep an eye on, because natively every companion has 6 resistance. So that's important to know. Like if you like to use the foil version of Boromir, that's the one from Realms of the Elf Lords and not the reprinted version that had the resistance reprinted onto him. These are 6. Every companion is 6 natively unless it states otherwise. Faramir is one of your high resistance guys. Faramir has a 7 resistance. Gandalf would be another one that you would potentially look to heal, though, so that you could protect yourself from more events. And Gandalf does have 7 resistance. I think everyone else is probably in the 6 or less slot, though. So that's important to be aware of, because again, your burdens reduce your resistance. So if you're wearing a burden on your ring bearer, then he goes down to 6. Gandalf goes down to 6. Everyone else goes down to 5. You wear 2 burdens, then suddenly you can only do it on Gandalf, because he's the only one left with enough resistance. So do be aware of that resistance number, because you want to keep being able to use that ability. And then you'll want to be selecting a minion that has a good special ability, because you're canceling that minion's special ability until the regroup phase. But again, you should usually be able to just outright discard any minions that are really going to give you problems. But just in case you wouldn't be able to do that for whatever reason, you can always cancel that minion's special ability with the Steward's Legacy. So those are, again, very key card to be aware of, the Steward's Legacy and the interaction of that with Boromir and Faramir. Then moving on to our less critical but still part of the engine Gondor events. The next one we have there is the Houses of Healing. So this says when you play it, spot a man to add 3 tokens here, and then you can add 2 and either discard this condition or remove a token from here to heal a Gondor man. And again, I'm going to say you're typically going to want to just add 2. You want to probably keep your tokens on here for use later, and so that you can reinforce them. But basically, if you read this, add 2 to heal a Gondor man, this is very, very similar to Boromir's own effect. You know, Boromir has that natively for himself that during the fellowship phase, add 2 to heal Boromir. This will let you heal other companions. And again, it's a fellowship action, so it really does mirror that Boromir ability. So it's not going to help out Boromir, but it's really going to help out Faramir and any of your other rangers that you're heavily exerting to do the Athelian Blade abilities. That's the nice thing about Ranger of the White Tree and Madril is, you know, they're generally on their own not going to be very useful fighting or whatnot, but they are good to have additional exertions for Athelian Blades. Then, so that's the Houses of Healing. Then we have the Storied Homestead. Again, this one is, I'd say, more situational because when you play this, add a token here for each Gondor companion who has resistance 7 or more. So that is literally just Faramir natively, because Faramir is the only one with printed resistance 7, and that means you have no burdens showing on your ring bearer, because if you did, that would reduce Faramir down to 6. So that's a pretty strict spot requirement, actually, is the 7 or more resistance. The good thing is you do have a couple Ranger's Cloaks. So if you have Faramir plus 2 other people with Ranger's Cloaks, you'd actually get to put 3 on the Storied Homestead. Or, you know, if you have Faramir with a Ranger's Cloak, you can have a burden and still be able to play the Storied Homestead. Because you really want to play this when you can at least get 1 token onto it. Because if you play it and get no tokens, then you can never reinforce it. So you want to make sure that at the time you play it, you're able to spot 1 or more Gondor man who has resistance 7 or more. Because this is a nice effect. If a special ability is used, discard this condition or remove 2 tokens from here to cancel its effect. So again, you're going to typically be going for the remove 2, but that just outright, in response, cancels any minion's special ability. So that's, again, incredibly strong to keep broken minions in check. Then this is really just a token pile, I would say. This originally was a broken card as printed, you know, so basically what it says is each time a non-wraith minion is played, you may spot a man to put a token here. So literally anytime your opponent plays a minion that's not a Nazgul, you get to add a token onto the Faithful Stone. So it is just a token pile, you know, and that's what it's good for, is just to generate an obscene amount of Gondor tokens. But the effect here says remove 3 tokens from here to spot a minion. That minion cannot be assigned to a skirmish until the regroup phase. That was the broken part, because originally that was, you know, this is how it's printed. And basically you could just remove 3 and cancel out a minion from skirmishing. They added the clause, any shadow player may remove 2 to prevent this. So you're tending to give a decent amount of Twilight, and then your opponent, if you tried to do this, they are pretty much going to be able to remove 2 to stop you from doing it. But if they're ever foolish and really spend down all the Twilight and don't save themselves 2, then you know that you have this to use. But I would say this is likely not to be relied on as a primary minion exclusion method, and it's largely just to create a pile of Gondor tokens. Then and this is non-unique, so when it used to be a broken card, you could play 4 of them. But here we're only playing 1 copy, because again, we're just using it primarily for the token pile, and because our opponent can remove 2 to prevent it, we're not going to really try to be too extensive on that, I wouldn't say. Now, the last part of our token strategy is the Soldier's Cache. And again, this has kind of a fortification type ability about wounding a minion, but what you're really using this for is the regroup ability. Exert a ranger to reinforce a Gondor token. Basically, this is very difficult to play, but what you're going to do is, if you know you're going to be healing all of your companions, whether it's a Sanctuary or Mythland or Knickerbreaker's Bog, any of those things, if you know is coming up, you want to make sure that you get all your exertions that you can, and make sure that you get the free tokens. So that's really what that's for, is to get those free tokens. And, you know, so this is a card that actually a deck that actually makes use of this. This is kind of a famous card for supposed to be included, and then they screwed it all up. That's another story for another day, but it was included in Treachery and Deceit when it was really supposed to be included in Rise of Saruman. So that is the Soldier's Cache. Then our conditions for other cultures. We have, as part of our Gandalf strategy, a pair of long-stemmed pipes. And so what this is for is just to get Gandalf cards into our discard pile. So primarily our events. So anything that we need to search up, whether it's going to be a saved from the fire, if, you know, we want to burn our Ranger of the White Tree to set up all of our Gondor cards, or if we need to get a Wizard is Never Late, or if we need to put that into the discard pile so that we can pull a Gandalf, we can exert Barlaman, pull the Wizard, pull the Gandalf. There's a, you know, it really just helps your deck work together. Again, if you haven't played it, you look at this card and be like, oh, that seems kind of bad. It's 2 cost to put a card from my deck into my discard pile. But again, it's so that you can get the recursion. So that is 2 long stem pipes. Then for Smeagol, I mentioned this earlier, we do also play Don't Look at Them. I love the AI version of this much better, so you see that this is the one I run in all my decks, is the AI version. Basically, or AI alternate image for people who don't know that acronym. This is, again, just these 2 cards are so synergistic because Smeagol adds 2 threats to exhaust a minion and assign that minion to Smeagol. And then normally what would happen is, well, that minion will just overwhelm Smeagol. But what you do is you play Don't Look at Them, discard 3 cards from hand to wound a minion. Smeagol is skirmishing. So that basically finishes them off. So Smeagol exhausts them, and then the 3 cards you discard off of Don't Look at Them finish him off. And again, this is a condition. So this just sits down on the table, and you can do that as many times as you are able to add the threats with Smeagol. Or twice if a Wraith minion. Probably not relevant, but that is an amazing, you know, well-known combo that you want to use. And then the last thing, just again for more condition control, we do have the Gladden Homestead with Smeagol. So that's going to really just screw with your opponent's shadow conditions, clog them back to the top of their deck, and protect your fellowship. So Gladden Homestead. So that is all of our conditions. Now we are down to our last type here, which is events. And so there's a number of powerful events in this deck. This is kind of a throwaway event from the Fellowship expansion that says, spot a ranger to discard a roaming minion. So again, it's very specific. You have to have a ranger. There has to be a roaming minion. But we know, if we know anything about Madril, there's always rangers and there's always roaming minions. So this is just one of those fun things about a game when you have so many cards printed, is this card from set 15 magically works with this card from set 1, and you literally pay this for a cost of 1, no exertion, no penalty of any kind, and it literally just discards a minion. So it's just a 1-cost event that discards a minion. You have plenty of ways to do that natively in the deck, though, so we don't go too crazy with this. We just play 2 copies of that, though, as additional kind of defense to just wiping a minion off the table. And you'll notice that's maneuver phase too, so that synergizes with the Madril ability that triggers at the start of the maneuver phase. So Aragorn peeking through the window there. Then the next one I've mentioned already, and similar synergy to our powerful guide deck, which is running 4 copies of A Wizard is Never Late. Again, I love this card just because it's a staple set 1 Lord of the Rings card. Very well known, well used. And again, the thing to remember here is play a Gandalf character from your draw deck. This lets you get any of your allies too. Again, allies are characters, so once you get your Gandalf going, then you can get Barlaman, then you can get Hugin, you can get all these guys back out of the deck and play them directly to the table. So if relevant, that doesn't count towards the rule of 4 because it plays directly to the table. But, really it's just for searching and getting your combo set up, in particular making sure you have a wise guide to protect yourself. Then I mentioned this earlier too. We've got our 1 copy of Save from the Fire. That's so that we can pull that up, long stemmed pipe that into your discard pile, and then use Barlaman to pull it. So that's that's your big combo here. You can play 1 copy of this, and then just long stemmed pipe, search your deck for it, put it in your discard pile, and then exert your Barlaman, pull it back, and then burn your burn your white tree or whatever you need. So that's a really nice to be able to dedicate only a single slot for that and be able to have that access. Then this is a huge card in this deck, is the Traveled Leader. So any of you guys who played Expanded know there's a ton of site path manipulation to be had. And what this does is spot a wizard to replace a site in the current region with a site from your adventure deck. So ultimately what this does is let you recur sites, because you can get sites that you've already played back into your deck. And so that will when we look at our site path, I'll really explain how we can severely abuse that in this deck. But again, this can get recurred with Barlaman. So then the trick will be is, can you heal Barlaman, get this back again? And it's a trick with Mythlond. You'll see kind of when we go through that, but it's basically a loop. Then for protection, we have a New Light. A New Light, again, is just a fantastic card, probably overpowered. You can take your opponent's best minion out of their hand and get rid of it, and then you give them their worst minion from their discard pile. So all for a cost of 1 is, pretty cheap to be able to do that. So that just protects you from, again, if there's a minion, you're already, really cleaning minions off the table, but there's certain minions that are going to be difficult for you to deal with, and this just lets you deal with them right out of the hand, and so that they never even hit the table. Here's Deep in Thought. Again, you guys are probably pretty familiar with this one. Spot 4 Twilight, and if you can, you discard all shadow conditions. This is a really good one when you're playing Gandalf with Mono Culture, which is Citadel to Gate. Exert Gandalf twice to remove all threats. Again, in this deck, we don't care so much about remove all threats, but this is nice. Heal all companions of 1 culture. So that'll allow us to heal all our Gondor men. And again, can look at possibilities of recurring that. So almost done here. Because we rely so heavily on our conditions for the setup in this deck, we do run a full play set of Something Slimy. So Something Slimy, what that does is it just lets you spot Smeagol to play any Free People's condition from your draw deck. So that's very incredibly versatile, because all of those conditions that we looked at for our Gondor men, we're literally just running 1 copy. Even of our essential conditions, we're able to just go ahead and search the draw deck for any of this that becomes pertinent. Like I said, Steward's Legacy is going to always be pertinent, but then we can really just piece together whatever conditions we want from our deck with Something Slimy. So that's a fantastic card. And then, like I said, if you lose a card, you can always a condition. You can always Hugin. Because your opponent discarded your condition, it's sitting in your discard pile. Then you Hugin to put it back on bottom of your draw deck. Then you play Something Slimy to put it back into play. So between Hugin and Something Slimy, you can instantly get back any condition. So that's a really good combo for you to be aware of. And like I said, full play set of that. And then our very last card, very powerful as a 1-of, is One Good Turn Deserves Another. Spot Smeagol to play the Fellowship's next site. Then may add a burden to take this card back into your hand. So again, this is where we're really getting a lot of burdens, is because we do want to just keep doing that over and over. But that's what Shadowfax is for, is to keep those burdens off of us. But basically, this will allow you to always play the next site, which in Expanded is just incredibly strong to control that site path. So you just play it, add a burden, take it back to your hand, and then next time you move, you play it again. And this is good in the Fellowship or Regroup phase. Well, that's the deck, but that part segues us nicely into our site path. So we'll finish up the video with that. So we do have the Damned Gate stream, and that is going to be used to pull that one good thing deserves another that I just mentioned. So if you happen to already have this in your hand, you can always pull a something slimy, but primarily you're going after one good turn deserves another because you get this out, and this again, play a Free People's card from your draw deck. So you can play that, get that going, take it back into your hand. So that is really what you're looking to do there. So then once you have the one good thing deserves another loop going, you get to choose the next sites. Your one site for setup is the Prancing Pony. At the start of your fellowship phase, you may add a burden to play a ranger from your draw deck. So that lets us get our single copy of Boromir and know that we're always going to have that every time because that Boromir is a ranger. So this is nice, the expanded version of this. It doesn't have to be Aragorn. It just has to be any ranger. So we're going to use that to pull our Defender of Minas Tirith. Then this is really the most abusable site that you're going to be seeing in the deck is Mythland. So Mythland says when the Fellowship moves to this site, each player heals each of his characters. Why this is so incredible in this deck in particular, again, really look at the wording on your cards, guys, and make sure that you're taking full advantage. Characters, not companions. So characters is going to heal Barlam and Butterbur. Characters is going to heal Hugin. So the idea there is that the combo I was talking about earlier that is most potent with this is you play Mythland, you heal Barlam and Butterbur, you exert Barlam and Butterbur to take back your Traveled Leader, and then you basically use Traveled Leader to make sure Mythland is going to get recurred later on in the site path. Then when Mythland gets recurred in the site path, by your one thing deserves another, then you're going to heal Barlaman again. Then you're going to exert Barlaman again to take back the Traveled Leader. You're going to put Mythland back in your deck again. So it's basically a way that you can just keep and the consequence of this too is you're not gaining anything by healing Barlaman, taking this back. That in and of itself is not doing anything. But what you are doing is healing all of your other characters. Every time you do that loop, it's a full wound removed from every single character that you have. So it's just absurd the way, because you're going to be taking sick amounts of exertions. You really want to have a way to remove those. So this is the combo there. You have Neeker Breaker's Bog, which is kind of a similar, worse version of this. But what it does is when the Fellowship moves here, heal each character who has resistance 5 or more and exert each other character. Now, the sad part with this is why this is no Mythland is it works to heal your companions, but allies have resistance of 0, which that's just a weird rule that you have to know. So allies are not a character with resistance 5 or more. And in fact, if you had any allies that are not exerted, you actually would have to exert all your allies every time you move to Neeker Breaker's Bog because their resistance is always 0. But it doesn't wound them, it just exerts them. So it doesn't cause them to leave the table, but it certainly doesn't heal them, like Mythland does. So that's your second option there for healing. This is the opposite, which is putting this on your opponent so that they cannot heal. Again, this thing should have been excluded at sanctuaries, but it's not. So you can even drop this on your opponent at a sanctuary and they literally cannot heal at that sanctuary. So it's just busted. And then we're rounding out with just the rest of our standard expected expanded sites. Saranian Ruins to be a 4. Mount Doom to fix the site path in place if we want there to not be site manipulation. And the Cavern Entrance for canceling skirmish special abilities, typically if you're, typically to favor the minions. And Bridge of Khazad-dûm, this Shadow Side plays a Balrog. So that is our site path. Well, guys, had another fun video with you here. Really enjoyed this. Let me pull out our cards that we might want to use here for the thumbnail, and see what we can find here from my stack that I've been laying out while we go through this. But yeah, this is another deck right on par with Powerful Guide in terms of being an absolute tier 1 deck, and really making expanded the broken format that it is. So let's go with these two boys up here. Let's go with, get Boromir in there. Denethor loves him, so let's put him in there. And then let's go ahead and throw down like the Faramir and an Ithilien Blade. You know, that looks like a cool assortment here. That blade is really getting blocked by my light here. So let's see there. There we go. Should give us a good thumbnail there. So, well, thanks guys. Appreciate you watching. Appreciate all the feedback and support that you guys are giving. I was actually a little surprised. I thought the expanded format might not be as interesting to some people, but I think part of it is people don't know these cards as well as they might know, you know, Fellowship block or King block. So people really like and enjoy having the strategies and the interactions explained to them, so they can kind of see how this format works and what some of the broken synergies are. But as you can see, just complexity wise, just on your own cards, like completely even ignoring anything your opponent's doing, there's so much complexity just within your own deck and the interactions of your own cards. So hopefully that's one of the takeaways from seeing these expanded videos, is that if you're going to play this, you definitely need to spend some time just reading your cards and knowing what they all do, because there's some very fine nuanced interactions that you're going to do. So, well, thanks guys. Appreciate you watching. This has been the Ultimate Madril. Thanks again to Sergeant Drano on the Last Homely House forums for the list. And hopefully, you know, you guys may get a chance ever to play this. You know, never feel bad of just throwing some proxies together and taking this thing for a spin, because yeah, it's another deck where if you try to put this on paper, you know, I've been working probably for a year putting this together, just because many of the cards are expensive or hard to find, and then obviously I like to do the bit with the foils too, and that makes things even harder. So thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe to our channel, and look forward to more videos. Thanks, guys.